looking live at Talladega Superspeedway. Site of today's 1000bulbs.com 500. Cash and tickets is what it's all about. So let's head to the studio for today's edition of Racers Odds. Here's your host, John Roberts.
And welcome once again, everybody, to yet another edition of Racers Odds. We are your number one source for the information and statistics you need each week to make the proper wagers on NASCAR's top series. But this weekend is a whole different beast. Talladega is the racetrack that put the word super in super speedway. It is the biggest. And when it comes to NASCAR, it just doesn't get bigger or faster. Practice speeds well over 200 miles per hour tells you what we're in for today. But this is also the middle event in the 3-race round of 12, so there is a lot on the line here and a lot to be gained as you look to see who the odds are on to win this race today. Jeff Hammond, Steve Makinen with us once again. And gentlemen, this is a really difficult one to wager on, but also, Jeff Hammond, we have the kind of intensity ramping up right now. When you go to a racetrack like this in the playoffs, it simply doesn't get much more intense.
No, it really doesn't. And excuse me, the thing is, we've got two of the heavy hitters coming in here after having a bad race last weekend at Dover. Joey Logano, as well as our pole sitter, Chase Elliott, looking to rebound and try to get things back on track. They find themselves deep in the hole as far as the playoffs are concerned. And you come in here, and I think I want to hear what Steve's got to say about Talladega, because this is one of those racetracks that you got to believe nobody knows what's going to happen. It's going to be real hard to always get it right based off statistics.
For the race car drivers and the teams, this racetrack at Talladega is a completely different beast, and it's the same thing in the wagering world. So we're going to take the opportunity today for you, our listeners, and our viewers to give you a little bit more education on what kind of gambling is available, where it's available, and how you can take advantage of it. So let's now go to our expert in that area. The editor of Point Spread Weekly, of course, is Steve Makinen. And Steve, one thing you told us earlier in this week, just because it's an unpredictable race does not mean you should shy away completely from wagering on it, because there is some value to be gained, and there's good reason for that.
Yeah, that's exactly right, John. There's actually two ways you can look at this. The grade for this track is an F for statistical handicapping. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't bet this. I mean, it's just you can't really use statistics to really give you a good advantage over the odds maker here. On the flip side of that argument is the odds maker, the bookmaker, does not have an advantage over the bettor either. If you look at this week's matchups, most of them are in the minus 110 to minus 130 range. There's not any real high prices you're going to be paying this week. And that's because the bookmakers aren't that sure of what to expect either. So in that sense, the bettor could actually have an advantage today.
Yeah, an advantage you can take care of, you can take advantage of, and also sometimes the emotional thing will come into play here. If one of your drivers you like is 100, 200 to 1, maybe somewhere down the road, there's some real tickets to cash when it comes to wagering on a guy you just might think may have a chance to win this thing, because if you fire your engine at Talladega, you have an opportunity to win the race. So as we watch drivers open up this week, there wasn't much of a change between where the drivers opened and where they are now, because qualifying simply doesn't mean as much. So your pole sitter, Chase Elliott, opened at 10 to 1, but he's still at 10 to 1. Joey Logano opened at 8 to 1, and currently he is 10 to 1. So Jeff Hammond, when you look at this thing, A, you have the intensity factor going on here. B, you have the unpredictability, and perhaps this time around a little move up because of potential rain in the area. We've seen this before. This could have an effect on how the crew chiefs manage this thing and who might win the race.
Yeah, but you got to remember, we've got to get through two stages to make it an official race. But besides that, when you start looking at who everybody's kind of like thinking is a favorite, it really matters who you're running with. We see the speeds escalate almost 20 miles an hour from what they qualify at to when they get in the draft. So the bigger the number, the more you're going to see speed, and who you work with has a big factor on that also. So this is a racetrack and a race that you really are dependent a lot on who is behind you or who you're behind. And during the course of practice, trying to figure out, I think right now, and I'd like to throw this out there, that's food for thought. I know this is something we didn't discuss as far as Steve Makinen is concerned. But, Steve, to me, this race lends itself to prop betting really, I think, very nicely because of the manufacturers and possibly even the teams, because you look up there as far as qualifying. Hendrick Motorsports has got the first 4 starting positions. But from position 5 all the way down to 17, you see a long list of Ford entries with exception of one Toyota. So manufacturer versus manufacturer, or team, Stewart-Haas Racing or Team Penske, for example, versus Hendrick. What do you think about that?
Well, you're exactly right in the groupings of these right now. The ironic thing about it is, while Hendrick was outstanding in qualifying, it was the SHR guys that were the best in the practice sessions. So that's Ford versus Chevy right there. If you want to throw a Toyota in as having a chance, maybe the Joe Gibbs team, obviously there's some guys capable of making a run there. You could probably do that. But at this point, I would agree with you in that it comes down to probably Ford versus Chevy.
And when it comes down to the pole position for either a Daytona race or a Talladega race, it's kind of just all about the pageantry there, getting the check and getting to hold up the flag on a Friday or Saturday. Right now, it doesn't really matter all that much, but one thing our pole sitter, Chase Elliott, does know is that the intensity ramps up at this time of the season.
Yeah, I definitely think it is. I guess the good news is at least you have another race after this one to determine your the rest of your time if you have a bad day here on Sunday. So I think it would be even more so if it was the final race. So at least it's in the middle, and if you crash on Sunday, we pretty much know we have to go win Kansas. I think beyond that, and if we don't crash, then we'll assess our points beyond there. So try to keep from crashing.
Yeah, there was a period of time where Talladega was an elimination race in the playoffs, and the teams and the drivers really didn't like that and lobbied NASCAR pretty hard to get that changed. They did get it changed. Nonetheless, you can't really win a Talladega race on the first lap, but you certainly can lose it. So patience is a virtue right here. Another thing, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you see the drivers, individual drivers, and their odds scrolling underneath the screen we have right now, and also the star next to a driver indicates a playoff driver. Little bit of statistical knowledge for you. There are 11 drivers who got their first win at Talladega. Of those 11 drivers, 6, it was their one and only win. So Jeff Hammond, when you look at that, if you look a little bit further back in the field, just for instance, if you were to have bet on Justin Haley, which probably not a lot of people did at Daytona last time around, he was the winner in a rain-shortened race. If you were to have thrown $10 down on Justin Haley, you would have walked away, Hammond, with $20,000. So there is opportunities here for the real long shot, for the people who are not faint at heart.
No, and I think that's what Steve was trying to say earlier, is that there's opportunities here if you do your homework, and then at the same time when you look and you maybe pay attention to for example, the other day during a practice session, Brendan Gaughan from the South Point casino, it loves the race, been racing a lot of years in Xfinity as well as in the Cup Series. He found himself at the top of the leaderboard because his car during the course of the draft looked extremely fast. But a guy like Brendan Gaughan could wind up being one of those 11 drivers that got their one and only race sometime later on this afternoon if he finds himself in the right position at the right time. Talladega's a great equalizer.
Yeah, it sure is. So, Steve, if you look at our favorite drivers right now, there are 3 drivers currently 10-1, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Chase Elliott. Normally, when we come to a racetrack, we're looking at the odds for the favorites really in the 3-1, 4.5-1 area. What is it so different? I mean, that's a big swing from like a 4.5 to 1 to a 10-1 for the favorites, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I actually sort of disagree with it, because I think in a track like Talladega, if you're running out front, and typically you get there by having a fast car, you have a solid team, you qualify well, you practice well, you got a good shot to win. And so I wouldn't discount maybe 2 to 3 guys being favorites. Obviously, Logano and Elliott are in some playoff trouble, and they need to run well here. And Logano's become probably the elite plate or restrictor plate, a former restrictor plate track racer on the circuit. So I wouldn't discount the fact that Logano and Elliott have better than a 10-1 shot to win.
And if you want to just go back through this restrictor plate or super speedway wins, Brad Keselowski leads all active drivers with 5 of those wins right now, and he finds himself, he will go off at 10-1 as well.
The other thing I'd like to add is that, believe it or not, folks, we've got 9 former winners in this field, which is quite large at any racetrack we go to. But you got 9 guys, and you just mentioned Brad Keselowski. He's got 5 wins here at this track, along with his teammate Joey Logano. So you can see why they would put these 2 guys more or less at the top of the list at 10-1. But still, it's Talladega, and it's so unpredictable. Even though, to me, Steve, some of these numbers look like saying, well, golly, if a guy wins 5 times, he's not, that old, and he's been pretty successful on a regular basis.
I agree with you. That I guess that's what I'm trying to communicate too. Some of these seem pretty pretty appetizing as odds. Or 10-1 on a guy like Logano. He's usually out front in these races, and that's the way you avoid trouble in these things. If you get out front, you're not in the danger of being in that big one. So you look for the guys that have the speed so far, that are on the big teams, and maybe pick for them to possibly win.
So with that being said, Steve, can you kick us off, though, on our bets of the week? Each week here on Racers Odds, we give you one bet that each of us kind of likes, that each of us thinks that there could be value in. And, Steve, go ahead and start us off with yours.
Okay, my bet of the week, I'm going to go with Eric Almirola in a matchup versus Ricky Stenhouse. Eric Almirola has also become a great super speedway driver. He had the top rating here at Talladega in April. Stenhouse, actually, since they've taken the plates off these things, he hasn't been as strong. Roush Racing, not real strong itself. Eric Almirola for Stuart Haas, they've showed great speed this week. I think this is based upon past statistics beyond when they took the plates off, and I think Almirola is just a much better driver at these tracks right now.
All right, we're going to hear from Eric Almirola a little bit later on in the program. So now, Jeff Hammond, what do you say?
I'm actually looking at Austin Dillon in the 3 car versus the 6 car of Ryan Newman. When you take a look at the average finish there, it's a little bit deceiving. What numbers I've been looking at has to do with the fact that Austin Dillon has been DNF 3 out of the last 5 races here at Talladega. Does pretty good at Daytona, but Talladega is definitely his Achilles heel. On the other hand, Ryan Newman, he has been in the top 10 the last 4 or 5 races here at Talladega. He's always figured out a way how to get a pretty good finish at this track, and he's in a Ford. I think Fords are going to be strong today just because of the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys are leaning towards some drivers who have a history of staying out of trouble on these racetracks, and that's important as well. We also thought we'd look at something completely different this time around, since Talladega is completely different this time around. Let's take a look at the odds to win the championship for a particular driver. Now, bear with us on this for a second, because there is good reason behind this. Couple of weeks ago, Chase Elliott found himself at 6-1 to win the championship. Because of a blown engine at Dover, there was a very good chance that Chase Elliott would have gone on to win Dover. It's one of his best racetracks, has a 4.4 average finish there going into last week. So now Chase Elliott has been bet down, or odds makers has put him down at 25-1 to win the championship. So if you were right now to put your money down on Chase Elliott, as we're going back to a racetrack where he won the last time around, if he has a good finish and if he can make it into further rounds, you're going to be laughing all the way to the ticket box if you were to have bet on him at 25-1. So we're going a little outside the box today and looking at something a little bit different. And now you guys get to say, what do you think? Do you agree with me on that or not? Jeff? I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'll start out here. I don't like the line moves to the championship odds after singular races, to be honest with you. Look at the way Kyle Larson moved up last week. To me, I had him in the round of 8 anyways. So to me, there was no reason to actually move him up from 14-1 to 6-1 just because he won last week. I think his toughest round is round 3, which is where he's going to have trouble making it to the final 4. So Elliott, you got a chance with a big line move like that today. He's a favorite today. If he scores a win, he won here obviously in April. That line move could be very advantageous to the bettor.
What do you think, Jeff?
I agree with him. I think you're picking a really good opportunity. I'm watching the same thing with Kyle Larson, and I agree with Steve. Round 3 is going to be his toughest challenge. But if the door was open right now and his number looks good as far as the championship's concerned, maybe a good time to go ahead and make an investment. Make a small investment, but still can have a pretty decent return on it. And if he makes it to Homestead and you still feel good about him, you can always come back even if the odds drop down to 8-1 or 6-1. you've already covered yourself in a lot of different ways. So, I mean, it's like, if you believe in what you're doing here, sometimes you got to plan ahead. You just don't always put all your money on this one race and one horse.
Well, folks, you're going to want to stay with us. When we come back from this commercial break here on Racers Odds, we're going to take a very in-depth look at where and how wagering on sports is legal around the country. And also, Steve Makinen is going to give us a little bit of Wagering 101 education into what is available on NASCAR, on NASCAR's Top Series to wager, and where the best value may be and what the future holds. Stay with us.
You didn't think he'd put down the microphone completely, did you?
Greetings from Las Vegas.
Well, neither did we. Hear legendary broadcaster Brent Musburger on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
I never told my wife how much fun I had when I was staying here for about 3 weeks. Oh, it's terrible living in a casino. It was the greatest 3 weeks of my life. This is the only book in town that's open 24 hours.
There you go.
Make that bet around 4 o'clock in the morning.
You don't need a dress code. Pajamas are good.
Brent Musburger on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Sirius XM Channel 204.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports. Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back once again, everyone, to Racers Odds. We're here with you every race day to give you the information and stats you need to make a wise wager on NASCAR's Top Series. We now find ourselves at one of the wildest, biggest racetracks in all of motorsports, that, of course, being the Talladega Superspeedway, and we're in the middle race of this 3-race second round of 12 in the playoffs. But we wanted to take an opportunity today to go back a little bit to tell you exactly how fast this wagering is growing and what states have legalized it across the country. Our wagering expert is Steve Makinen, editor of Point Spread Weekly. And Steve, as of right now, we have 13 states that have legalized wagering on sports. 5 other ones have legalized, but they are pending their launch. So what do you feel so far about the states, Steve, that are involved, and how much steam this is picking up around the country?
Well, obviously, this has been a big couple of years for legalized wagering in this country. And in terms of NASCAR growth, right now, I think we have maybe 5 states that are actually launched, and you're able to bet on races at, and I believe it covers 9 of the races that we see each year. I think if the other group that is legalized right now and hasn't launched, I think we'll get another 7. So you figure we're almost about half of the races at that point. Now, it'll be fantastic, obviously, and I could see us getting to this point. It's probably going to grow faster than ever in the next couple of years as states realize what they're missing out on. If we can get to a point where we get all 50 states and we can get betting even at the track at all 36 races, I think NASCAR is in for a pretty good run on that.
Yeah, if you look at the ones who have legalized and are pending their launch, North Carolina, that's going to represent a lot of races for you. Illinois and New Hampshire, those are places, Jeff Hammond, where we go as NASCAR, and where there's going to be the opportunity for further growth in the future.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, to Steve's point, is that people are starting to understanding a lot like, the lottery. A lot of these states at one time didn't want to have state lotteries, and now they realize that they're good revenue sources. And I think that, betting on racing, no matter what it is, or any kind of sports book, is another revenue source for a lot of these states. And once they figure out how to manage it, it'll be this regular business just like anything else. And I think the cool thing about it is the folks at home and also the professional gambler have an opportunity to benefit also. So, if you do your homework and you get a little bit of luck on your side to go along with your due diligence, you can come out on top. So I like what's going on here. I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think it also will do for NASCAR the same thing that betting on horse racing did in recent years when they started legalizing that more and more and more. I think it will help, bring the sport back stronger than ever.
42 minutes till the green flag at Talladega. Not much movement here on the odds because of what Talladega is all about, and that's why we're delving in a little bit more today to what is available out there. So each week on Racers Odds, we focus on three main parts of wagering. First of all, the individual drivers to win, head-to-head matchups, and groups. Steve Makinen, could you take us through these and tell us what the best place is, what your odds are in each of these areas to win head-to-head and in the group matchup?
Well, in my opinion, the best way to win in NASCAR is on the matchup basis. You deal with only two drivers head-to-head. You pick the driver that beats the other driver, and you win. You cash your ticket on that one. Now, if you're into maybe getting a bigger payday, such as today when you figure long shots have a better chance, hey, to win, bet, or even a group wager in some circumstance here would be you'd get a better payout. I mean, your chances aren't going to be as good, but you can really get a nice score on a race like this. So that's three of the options so far, and they're probably the most common available at books across the country at this point.
Steve, we hear the term parlay quite a bit. What does that term mean, parlay?
Parlaying is just putting one or two or more bets together. And say you have two matchups. You'll need both of those matchups to win. And instead of getting minus 110 or minus 110, when you combine those, you get about a 2.5 to 1 if you win both of those. So if you had a $10 parlay, you could collect 25 if you had even odds on two matchups.
So Jeff Hammond, earlier this year, we were talking about that, and you went against the odds, and you picked Kevin Harvick as the race winner at about 4 to 1. And you were actually correct with that. What do you put in when you go for something like that? What do you put into predicting a race winner, especially in the individual category? Jeff.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
the way I try to go about it, I try to look at the past records, just a lot like what Steve does. But also I try to pay a lot of attention to the practice times and how the car has been working and how the crew chief is communicating with his driver at that point in time over the last couple of races. If the race car driver is as savvy as Kevin Harvick and he knows how to, maintain his tires and kind of, pace himself early part of the race and take advantage of what other drivers are, that has a lot of influence on what I do, is just trying to make sure that I've got somebody who can close the deal out when it's important to make the right call and having a pit crew. The other thing is, folks, is always having a solid pit crew to get you off pit road to get track position.
So, Steve Makinen, when you run your simulation, and folks, if you're out there wagering on NASCAR, one of the first things you should look at, no guarantees here, of course, but one of the first things you should look at is Steve Makinen's simulation. You run thousands of scenarios back and forth from top to the bottom. This time around, you have Kevin Harvick coming out on top. But once again, just to refresh our listeners and viewers, what do you put in to your simulation?
Well, there's really 6 different factors that'll go into the simulation per driver. And then when you multiply that by his team, it becomes 12 factors. So I look at qualifying position. Earlier in the week, I will project a qualifying position based upon history there. Same thing with practice speeds. Then the factors that don't change throughout the week are how they do at a particular track, how they do at I call it a track grouping, track similar to the one we're at now. And then how they're doing recently, both on their driver rating and on their finish position. So you take those 6 factors, multiply by 2 to get 12 based on team, and that's basically I develop a power rating out of that for each guy for each race.
So, Steve, real quick, we see a lot of movement throughout the weekends, but this time around there hasn't been quite as much movement either up or down in odds. What are your biggest movers up or down this weekend heading to Talladega?
Well, the biggest movers downward, hey, let me get to that, was Kyle Larson, I believe. I'm sorry, Denny Hamlin. He's been struggling this week. He'll be starting last. Engine change. He went down 10 spots in my simulation from what's happened so far. Daniel Suarez and Martin Truex have also dropped 7 spots. Looking for those going upward. Alex Bowman, Ryan Blaney, 6 spots each. Kyle Larson, 8 spots up. So those are the guys moving upward on the simulation.
Yeah, and just one more development from the racetrack. Actually, too, there was some drizzle in the area. The covers have gone back on the race cars. We're hoping that rain moves away. We'll keep an eye on that for you. But also, Paul Menard has asked to have Matt Crafton, the Truck Series champion, former champion, standing by for him because he's having trouble with his neck and his back. And probably last thing in the world you want to do with neck or back pain is drive around in a 200-mile-an-hour freight train at Talladega. So Matt Crafton is standing by for Paul Menard if you were looking at that driver to perhaps cash you a ticket today. So we got to take another quick break here on Racers Odds. When we come back, we'll dive headlong into some of the matchups that we find very interesting this time around. And stick with us, folks. There is some value in these head-to-head matchups. Stay with us.
The Edge, only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
How you feeling? I'm feeling good. How you doing, bro? I'm feeling good, man. How you doing? How you doing?
The Edge, weekdays 3 p.m. Eastern.
The Raiders have made some sensational headlines. I don't think you or I or anybody who seriously handicaps the NFL saying, yeah, the Raiders are going to be a playoff.
I'm talking more public
more about public team, especially in Vegas with the excitement with that team going to be here in 2020.
Only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Sirius XM Channel 204.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSIN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSIN, changing the way you watch sports. Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds. The Talladega Superspeedway is the racetrack that put the word super in Superspeedway. It is a whole different beast for the drivers, the crews, and the fans down there as well. And this time around on Racers Odds, we thought we'd take a little bit of a different approach, too. Hope you enjoyed some of the background information we gave you about wagering and where it's going. But now we're going to dive headlong into some of the easier things to win money off of. That, of course, being our head-to-head matchups, and that's where Jeff and Steve have found their value this week as well. So let's go on right now and check out our head-to-head matchups. First time around, if you look at some of these drivers right now, one thing to take into consideration, the driver up there that has had the most wins, the most success at Talladega is, of course, Brad Keselowski with the 5 wins. Now, Steve Makinen, you may think that throws more credibility his way or more odds his way, but then again, this is Talladega.
Well, yeah, this is a racetrack you definitely don't want to overpay for anything, even based upon success recently. So be careful with that as you look at these. There's not really any real huge prices, so it's not a real danger here. But I mean, even laying them 125, kind of risky at a track like this.
Yeah, Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick, even money right there. I'm surprised once again that didn't change much with Denny Hamlin going to the back of the pack. But Jeff Hammond, we have seen over the years, just ask Dale Earnhardt Jr. about starting at the back of the field at Talladega, and any other driver that's done it before. It's happened. If you have to start at the back of the pack, yeah, you don't want to, but perhaps, Jeff, this could be the best place to have that scenario going.
Oh, this is definitely the best place because you will see drivers make moves, and sometimes those moves don't work, and they go basically from the top 5 all the way back into that 30th position at some time or another. So a lot of times drivers even go back there by design and work their way back through the field as we get deeper in the race. So starting back there is not necessarily the kiss of death like a lot of places on a road course or a place like Martinsville or Bristol. This is one of the racetracks that's more forgiving as long as everybody plays nice. I expect them to play nice at least early part of stage 1, so it gives you plenty of opportunity to make your way back up through the field.
So just taking the obvious one here, Steve, I would think if I would have to lay some money down right now, just based on your scenarios and Denny Hamlin starting in the back of the field, do you like Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin even there?
It seems like a no-brainer to me. 15 spot difference on the simulation. And we talked about this earlier with Ford having such good speed this week, Toyota maybe not as much. The SHR team, Harvick looking pretty strong there. Minus 110 might be a gift for bettors this week.
Can I challenge you on that just a little bit, Steve?
You absolutely can, because I would love to hear your insight.
I'd love to, because I'm looking at what Kevin does, and I'm a big Kevin Harvick fan. But when I look at his record here, but he's only got one finish better than 20th in the last 5 races here. While Denny Hamlin, on the other hand, he's got top 10 finishes in the last 3 playoff races, and I think even coming here being the Daytona 500 winner earlier this year, and every time Denny gets started at the back, he rallies to have an outstanding day. He may not always win, but he's usually up in the top, 6 or 7. So I like the fact that, the numbers are even, but I think the advantage still could wind up being Denny.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't disagree with that logic. I guess what happens here is a lot about, in Talladega, is about timing. If a big one happens as Hamlin's trying to get up towards the front, he could be, that bet's done after 20 laps. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I can
agree,
see where you're coming from.
But the one thing I think we need to watch here, and this is something I'm going to challenge you to put maybe in your simulation at Daytona and Talladega only. These drivers have the ability to play nice in that first stage more times than not. We see guys line up. They're willing to ride around, even too wide, give each other, the opportunities to make a little bit of passes here and there, but not really chop each other off or do any early blocking. And you're right. I agree with you. Anytime to super speedway racing, you're always worried about that one guy that decides, hey, this is the first lap of the race, but I'm going to race it like it's the last, and he throws a block and creates a big one. But I really think this is a golden opportunity for Denny to get from that deep in that hole and make his way up there. Or also be patient and say, well, I'm just going to ride around here for a while and let that first stage get through, and we'll make a green flag stop and see what we can gain on positions off of pit road.
Okay, well, along that front, I don't know if you've heard anything maybe at the track this week, because some guys tend to maybe make that strategy move to ride around in the back, even deep into the race, waiting for all the calamity to happen, and then making their move late in the last 20 to 25 laps. Have you heard anybody maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I totally expect that, and I'm gonna predict here early on with the 4 Hendrick cars being up front, they're going to line up as fast as they can to try to hang on to what they've got, because there's so many Fords right in behind them. I think Ford is going to make a big run on. We talked about the Ford Chevrolet battle. I think this opens the door for Toyota and basically Joe Gibbs and Matt DiBenedetto to get hooked up and get themselves in a position where they can go up and maybe hook on to the Chevrolet and work together. I think we may see Chevrolet and Toyota work better together today than you will see Ford and Toyota working better together.
Hey, all that being said, Steve, I still agree with you. That's the best matchup on that round, number one. Let's move on to matchups number two here and see who's up there. Some guys who have had interesting and mixed results over the years at the formerly plate tracks. And while we say formerly plate tracks, we used to run a restrictor plate. Now we're running a tapered spacer. A little bit of difference, but still it chokes up some of the horsepower out of the engine. And here we're looking at Kurt Busch last time around here, guys. You see him even with three different drivers. But by the same token, though, he almost won this thing, Jeff, last time around.
Yeah, I like Kurt, and one matchup only out of this deal happens to be the one against Clint Boyer, believe it or not, because of the fact he has led over 266 laps here at Talladega without a win. He's the most laps led of an active driver without a win. But he's such a good plate racer. Keep using that terminology, but he is a super speedway racer. He knows how to do it. He knows how to work with people. When you put him in the right position, he will get you that win. But if not, he'll get you a decent finish. So I think he's going to be strong today, and I like him against Clint Boyer.
All right, so let us.
Is it my time?
Yeah.
Is it my time for a challenge?
Yeah, challenge. Go for it.
I'm actually going to challenge that logic too. I think Clint Boyer is going to be the SHR darling today, if you will. I think he got himself in some playoff trouble last week, and I think that team's going to be looking out for him this week to get back up in there. He was fastest in happy hour, and as I look back the last 5 years, and there's been no driver that was either fastest in qualifying or fastest in happy hour that's gotten caught up in a big one. So they're typically running out front, and that's the best place to be to avoid that big one. And Kurt Busch is not showing the speed this week, and I think he's in danger of being in one of those big ones this week.
Guys, let's move on to our third group of matchups here, and we see at the top of this one two drivers who have won at this racetrack before, of course being Eric Almirola and Ricky Stenhouse. Both these two drivers have much different agendas on their minds right now, but one thing Eric Almirola knows is how this whole thing is going to play out in terms of team strategy. We've seen it a lot before, and Eric knows this is on everybody's mind.
It's just the way that this type of racing has gone. There's strength in numbers in the draft. You watch practice and you watch one car go out there by itself. It's going to go a lot slower than two cars together, and two cars is going to go slower than four cars, and four cars is going to go slower than eight cars. It's just the way the draft works. So there's strength in numbers, and so getting everybody aligned and organized and willing and wanting to work together is the challenge. And I think Ford in the past has done a great job at that, and I can't remember the exact number. You guys probably have all the stats and the data, but Ford for the last little while has dominated restrictor plate racing, and we've done that through collaboration and fast race cars. And so we finally gave one up or a couple up, but I still think that Ford is we have extremely fast super speedway cars, and if we do everything right and put ourselves in position and work together, that we can take a blue oval to victory lane.
And Eric, thank you very much. We do have all the stats and all the numbers like you mentioned. That's why we're here. That's our job. But you know what I find kind of interesting in this matchup number 3? Jeff Hammond, if you look at this, here we see Jimmy Johnson as a 110, 105 dog to William Byron and Eric Almirola. In years past, you just would not be looking at odds like this. This, again, is a totally different beast.
No, it is, but at the same time, it's when it comes to these particular drivers, I think Eric Almirola, I think I'm looking at Ford versus Chevrolet, and a guy who's won here very recently as last year, and Eric Almirola. And I still think that the young man, William Byron, with Chad Canals on top of the box, has been getting the job done more efficiently than the veteran Jimmy Johnson. So what I see here is a byproduct of Jimmy's recent lack of performance and everybody else stepping up. So depending on what you're kind of feeling here, if you're willing to do something, Jimmy seems to be proven to be vulnerable, at least in my mind. And Steve Makinen may want to challenge me about that, but I think he's vulnerable.
I'm not going to challenge you on that one. Actually, I do believe Almirola is in a good spot here in that particular matchup. Almirola is a good spot in a lot of matchups, if you ask me. He's coming off some good news here with extending his contract with Stewart Haas this week. He's been great at these super speedway races recently, and although I will kind of maybe disagree with him in the level of Ford's dominance lately. If you look back in April, we had Elliott and Bowman were 1-2. They were 1-2 at mid-race too. So maybe a little bit overstated to say they've been dominating, but I do like Almirola's particular matchups this week.
All right, so Steve, one thing when we look at this, normally when we look at a racetrack, and again, it goes back to the beginning of the show when we told you that there are good matchups on this racetrack, even though it is Talladega and it's very hard to predict. This is probably the first time in a while we've gone through our sets of matchups and not said stay away from one complete page. There's been something that intrigued us on every page along the way, so that's a good sign about getting a good wager out of Talladega. So when we come back, we're going to talk about groups. These are interesting because all you got to do is have your driver outpace three other ones, and starting position may have a lot to do with this one as well. Stay with us. Here we are here on Racers Odds, giving you the stats and information you need to wager on NASCAR's top series.
Gone Racing.
There's still wheel to wheel.
The weekly NASCAR show that gets you ready for this week's big race and more.
Oh, yeah!
Take a ride with us to Victory Lane on Gone Racing.
We just got these lines last night. It was plus 700 on Brad Keselowski. He's already down to plus 550, so I think we know where the money is.
It's going that way.
And that's where my money would have been, too.
Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, Channel 204, and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.
Great job.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports. Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back once again, everybody, to Racers Odds. Steve Makinen, Jeff Hammond, and John Roberts with you here, giving you all the info you need to make the wise wager on NASCAR's top series. Couple updates from the racetrack for you. As of right now, there is some rain in the area. There hasn't been enough rain to fall yet that would impact the start of the race, but there's some weather off to the west of the racetrack in Talladega, Alabama, that may make this interesting as we go through that third stage. Of course, in this day and age, it used to be a race to halfway. Now it's a race to the end of stage number 2. That's what makes it an official race, and that's what could make it one of those scenarios where we could see a huge surprise winner. And if someone had the guts to bet on him, it would be a huge payout as well. So now, guys, let's dive into these group matchings, and we'll start out with our Group A. And this is one of the difficult ones, I believe, Steve Makinen, to pick this one. Maybe you could count out Denny Hamlin, but when you look at those other three, it's hard to eliminate anybody in Group A.
Well, from what Mr. Hammond is saying, he's not eliminating Denny Hamlin. Yeah. So I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to believe that you look at these four drivers, assuming they avoid trouble today, these are going to be four guys in the front of the field at the end of this race. And if I'm picking from a group here, I would much rather take to win odds. If I'm looking at four of these guys, if you look at Logano plus 240, you can get him at 10-1 instead to win.
Yep.
So if he's going to beat this group, he has a good chance to win this race.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, very good point. So you do, again, have to defeat 3 other drivers in that situation. Why not just go for him as the winner?
No, I like his logic and his reasoning for that. It makes plenty of sense. And the thing about that group, they're all former winners here at Talladega. I mean, they get the job done. And I can't overemphasize, I think that you will see, unless something really crazy goes wrong, I think Denny will make his way to that last starting position. He'll make his way up into that lead group, and he'll be just fine. And the other thing, since we keep talking about a little bit about weather, what I've seen in the past with a lot of times when we have rain in the area, and John, you can help me back me up on this, race teams and drivers definitely are even nicer when they know they've got weather coming, because they know they've got to get to that end of that second stage. So you start doing anything too crazy, taking chances, not giving somebody some give and take, you may not get this race completed. And the next thing you know, it may get pushed in the next day, and they don't want that. I mean, drivers are smart enough, and they will look at the weather just like crew chiefs do, and they can monitor and can kind of take care of their ability to make sure they get to that cutoff point.
Yeah, they tend to behave themselves in the first guy. And one thing that stage racing has done, the effect that it's had on these super speedway races, is we can go really clean and green through the first 2 stages, and then that's when the yellows start waving, is when it's time to go in that 3rd stage, if we do get there today, and there is a question as to whether we will or not. Let us move on to Group B in our matchups and see who's involved here. And Steve Makinen, the mystery of Kyle Busch continues to lurk over us right now. We don't know when he's going to bust open again, but lately the performance hasn't been there for the 18 team.
It sure hasn't. However, he built himself such a nice cushion in the regular season that he's not really in any type of playoff trouble at this point. So he needs to straighten it out. He needs to do it in the next few weeks. But he's still a legitimate title contender, and I think it's just a matter of if not when.
Okay, so Kevin Harvick in the simulation that you ran, Steve, he is the top dog there in that one, so could be a good wager on that if you're looking at the group. So let's quickly go through the rest of the groups that are available right now. In our Group C, we have Ryan Blaney, Ricky Stenhouse, Bowman, and Almirola. These are all winners here, with the exception. Well, yeah, everybody's won, but not necessarily won in the Super Speedway. Steve, anybody here stick out?
This is a very, very tough grouping in my mind. I have 3 of these guys being potential sleepers today: Blaney, Bowman, and Almirola. I actually consider each of these 3 as a potential winner. So this is a tough one for me. I like Almirola's chances best. I don't think I'd take him at the plus 255 in this group, though I like him better in matchups, and maybe a to win at 25-1.
Group D has some interesting drivers right now. You would think by looking at this, your no-brainer would be Martin Truex Jr. at plus 250. But Jeff Hammond, Martin Truex Jr. and super speedways do not get along very well together. This champion driver is the guy who has led the most laps on super speedways without getting a victory.
No wins at Daytona, no wins at Talladega. And as a matter of fact, he's finished 20th or worse in the last 6 races at Talladega. He has no luck, or I guess is what you'd have to say. We know he's got fast race cars, but he's always in the wrong place at the wrong time, or has another issue on pit road. But he always winds up having a bad finish here at Talladega. So that's the reason why you see, I think, him this far down in groups and not being mentioned in a lot about being a potentially really strong winner today.
Another interesting group and a tough one to pick is Group E. Steve Makinen, we got Kyle Larson. Yeah, he won last week. No movement in this group from opening, except with the exception of Eric Jones it changed a little bit, and Paul Menard a little bit. Now, Paul Menard has that backup driver in Matt Crafton standing by. Yeah, sorry about that, Matt Crafton. But he is standing by to take over from Paul Menard, who's having some neck issues. Steve, again, anybody here that you like?
Not really. It's unusual. Jeff just mentioned this on the other group, to see Truex down in that Group D. It's unusual to see Kyle Larson in Group E. So obviously in the wagering circles, you might call these particular drivers, Truex and Larson, trap guys, if you will.
Okay. So as we look at Group F, Hemrick, Preece, Wallace, and Buescher, again, when we're talking about these big racetracks, you never really know, Jeff, what's going to happen with any of these drivers. Anybody stick out?
Well, you got to realize, Bubba Wallace has had a second place finish on a super speedway, so he's pretty darn good. Buscher's had some good runs. Even Ryan Preece, when you go back and look earlier this year, he was able to sneak through a big crash at Daytona and get a top 10 finish out of it. So, anytime you come to a super speedway, it levels the playing field, but it doesn't necessarily give you the numbers I would like to have to feel, really like, this would be definitely the guy that can get the job done. I think it's all about being in the right place at the right time.
So, Steve and Lugnut, if you look at these two things, we talked about the matchups head-to-head. There was some value there, but this time around, the groups, it just doesn't seem like any of those groups piqued either of you guys' interest.
You said it, John. I'm nothing for me in these groups today. I'd much prefer a longer shot on a race like this or a particular matchup.
Hey, Steve, I got a quick question for you here. When I went back and I looked at the Daytona Superspeedway race and the odds there, I noticed the same thing earlier, back in July, where the odds all came a lot closer together, and these numbers basically mirror each other from superspeedway race to superspeedway race. Is that kind of like a commonplace? Is this something you see, if we went back even to the first of the year and the earlier Talladega, would we see the same thing?
Yes, you will see that. Actually, there's two particular track groups that you'll get that on, and one is the road courses, and then two are these super speedway. They're just very similar racing, and the same types of drivers tend to do well at both.
And do the gradings that you give in your simulations and everything, does that help follow and dictate some of the same end results? I mean, this track having an F rating as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, 100%. Now, that said, like I said, I did look at the last 5 races, and in terms of finishing up front, the most important factors were qualifying position and how that particular driver did at Talladega recently. So don't discount those factors here. Those are very important.
12 minutes to go before a green flag at Talladega that has been moved up with the presence of rain in the Alabama area. We're going to wrap everything up for you here in just a moment on Racers Odds, get you up to green flag time, and also recap some of our best bets of the week and look at individual odds to win this race today at the track that put the word super in Super Speedway. Stay with us.
Before the pros tee off for this week's golf tournament, the VSiN experts help you make the cut on long shots.
When I profiled all the players for this tournament, I said Schauffele's number 1 on my board. I like the odds, 25-1. Let's go ahead and play X.
Brady Cannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds are your weekly betting caddies and help you cash those tickets.
Don't be afraid to maybe take some longer odd guys.
Don't miss Long Shots, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, the only golf betting show you need, exclusively on Sirius XM Channel 204.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. It's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports. Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
Welcome back, everybody. Pace laps have begun at Talladega Superspeedway. They are trying to get this race started with impending weather off to the west. Let us hope that it stays away. You see those big blobs, the little dot there under Highway 20. That is where the racetrack is located right now. So it looks like there's a window there before the green blob gets there. So there's a hurry-up mode going on right now at Talladega. Let's take a look at the playoff grid right now and see where our playoff drivers stand going into Talladega. Of course, the only guy who is actually relaxing right now is Kyle Larson with 1 win. He is through. Logano, Boyer, Elliott, and Blaney. Those are the drivers that need to have something really good happen to them today at Talladega. So with that being said, let's also look at individual odds for the drivers to win this race. Steve Makinen, one of the interesting things about the individual odds, first of all, winner usually is maybe 3-1, 4-1 in terms of odds makers. Here we got 3 guys 10-1.
Yes, love it. Good opportunity at this race in terms of winning big. I'm actually in already on 2 different guys, Joey Logano at 10-1 and Eric Almirola at 20-1. So those are a couple guys I think towing the Ford line real closely, but I think both of them are close, are very capable of winning.
And Hammond, I really like Kevin Harvick at 16-1.
I'm sitting there looking and saying the same thing. I'm thinking, with Steve, picking him in his simulation, coming out on top, and the fact that, he's been a while since he's been to victory lane here at Talladega. It could wind up being his time. He's been racing real smart, and his crew chief has been calling really some solid races. So strategy may come into play, especially with this weather in the area.
So, guys, let's take a look at something that's interesting in circles of wagering, not only just the odds to win, but also the odds to win the championship. At the beginning of the season, I don't think unless you're really very confident in your driver, it's a difficult wager to make. We've had some moving and shaking going on, especially with a couple of drivers. Kevin Harvick last week was 6-1 to win the championship, currently 4.5-1. Kyle Busch also, we've seen him move down lately. Now he's moved up just a little bit. Martin Truex on the upward swing. The biggest move downward, which I find fairly interesting, is, of course, Chase Elliott. Last week, he goes 8-1, now 25-1 after the blown engine at Dover. Steve Makinen, do you find any value here? Is this a wise move to make right now?
Okay, well, I look at this from a perspective of the regular season is highly important in this championship run. And I don't want to say these playoff races are irrelevant, because obviously they're not to the playoffs. But if you look at the standings right now, the top 4 guys are the top 4 guys I had going to Miami in my simulation just before the playoffs. So Hamlin, Larson, Truex, Harvick. That's what, or I'm sorry, Busch. Those are the guys I expected at Miami. And if I'm going to look at a championship winner, I'm looking at one of those guys.
So, Hammond, what do you think about these championship contenders? Is this a place where you would go?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said about, betting on these guys when they have like a little bit of a rise as far as that number is concerned, and maybe taking a long shot like a Chase Elliott. If you really think that they're getting better at Hendrick, and that was a fluke last week and he can rally back, it may be an opportunity to get some money, basically locked in when the numbers, was going to come back down. Same way it was with Kyle Larson a week ago. If you'd have been, getting a little aggressive and you're a big fan of his, you have these opportunities. But to Steve's point, I think the 4 guys he's picking are going to wind up being in Homestead. So, just don't bet too much on some of these long shots.
So, Steve, I think one of the real big things we got to hit once again is the fact that although this racetrack gets a odds-making grade of an F, there are still some head-to-head matchups that I feel as if we had some pretty good data behind that makes them some pretty wise wagers.
You're absolutely right, John. The prices are low here. This is a good chance to actually make some money. If you have even a gut feel, if you've watched these races close enough, you've watched the practices close enough, you know who's going to be running together. The prices don't reflect who are the best guys actually this week. So it's a good time to take advantage of maybe some short prices.
Yeah, and also Steve and Jeff, both you guys have mentioned how you like some of the odds right now on some of these guys to win this race. Yeah, it's difficult to predict, but to get a Kevin Harvick at 16-1 or a Joey Logano or Brad Keselowski at 10-1, this simply doesn't happen very often. So this is a golden opportunity here. So maybe one of the biggest things to take a look at today is that rain off to the west could see a very clean and green race. before the green blob comes over the racetrack. So as of right now, the cars are out running pace laps. Huge thanks to Steve Makinen today for a little extra work. Steve, we put you on the spot today. We do appreciate all the inside and the growth that is going on within the sports wagering community. Also, our guys behind the glass, Jeff Hammond, expert analysis, former champion crew chief. We appreciate that. And sit back, enjoy the race, everybody. We'll see you next race day.
This has been Racers Odds, a presentation of TRN, the Performance Racing Network.